Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Dennis.
So we're talking to you around the holidays. By the way, it's great to have you back. And
Thank you. Great to be here.
yeah, we get to chat about so many fun things that have to do with people and families. And you and I were chatting offline about what the holidays, because Thanksgiving is here and Christmas and Hanukkah and all the other holidays are around the corner, which brings a lot of joy and a lot of stress. And that's kind of
Yes,
what we
it
wanted
does.
to chat about today, about when you're a parent and you might be hosting, and that means the kids might be coming home from college, or grown kids that are adults with their children. I mean, there's all sorts of different varieties that we get a chance to talk about. And I imagine in your sessions, when you talk to families and individuals, that the family dynamic of getting under one roof and you haven't been under that roof for a long time with each other can present some challenges at times. There's also a lot of happiness and
Yes.
agreement and
All,
all that
all
that
of
goes
the
with it.
above.
Yeah,
Check,
that's
check,
right.
check. All of the
That's
above.
right. But I
Right.
did want to start with just the whole dynamic of it. And I wanted to ask you about something that I had a conversation with a friend the other day. My mom is 86, just for context. And when
Mhm.
I still talk to her, whether it's texting or on the phone once a week, and she lives in Canada, I get a sense of reversion to me being 16 again, even though I'm not living underneath her roof, but she still talks to me that way, not in a demeaning way, and that down to me, but just there seems to be a reversion about still that motherly thing. Make sure to go to the doctor to do this, get your teeth clean, make sure you're going on walks, just those kind of things. And I wanted to ask you about that when kids return after being empty nesters, do a lot of parents do that, and why do they do that?
You say do that as if it's like a thing you think, I'll do that now. I don't
Right.
think it's quite that way. I
Yeah.
think that it's like a well-worn shoe.
Okay.
There
Okay,
was
fair
one
enough.
time that shoe fit well and it had nice arch support, but now it no longer has arch support. And while it might fit well and be comfortable in one way, it's not really a good shoe to be worn. And that shoe needs to be updated. And so do these relationships. And not just updated. I think we all understand children grow up and move away from home. But in addition to updating your attitudes, you have to be mindful of them so that you don't fall back into the old attitudes. There's just this sort of, I almost think of it like an undertow. There's this pull back to the old way because you did that old way so many years, and then now they're in a different place and a different time in their lives, and they don't need you in the same way. And not only do they not need you in the same way, if you do those things, it can actually be destructive to the adult relationship. And it is important to build an adult relationship, which is
That
not the same as the child relationship. And if you don't build a sturdy relationship that's new, it's a lot easier to fall back to the old variety.
well, that makes a lot of sense. I want to stay on the parent and child coming back home from college thing for the holidays just for one more moment, and then we'll talk about
Okay.
families and holidays and what we intended to chat about. But I'll give you an example for me. So my daughter's a senior at college in North Carolina. She's come back home for the holidays, and I know that she is going to love being in her bed, being taken care of, full fridge. We're her private servants, and we're going to get her everything. She's going to enjoy that part of it, but she's also going to want to be left alone a little bit too, for some quiet and solace, and be left alone, not questioned a lot. And that's the adjustment that I think that parents have to get used to as your children get older. And this is back to my original question about reversion to that dynamic about them being younger and you really parenting them and having rules underneath your house. How does it work for both dynamics of the kid coming home and the parents, that it wasn't the way it used to be with this is my house, these are my rules, because you have almost a full blown adult coming back. And so they're different that way. So the dynamic's different, yet once again, that whole reversion about, hey, you're back at my place, so I expect you to be in before midnight or this and that.
Right.
Whatever the rules might want to be, everybody's a little bit different. How does that whole dynamic work?
Well, when you say how does it work, I think you're asking me, how do you make it work as functionally as possible?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing I would say, if we were making a soup, a healthy new soup for success, is we would have a big whopping dose of acceptance and tolerance for each other's errors, because there are going to be some. So if your daughter isn't feeling comfortable with the way that you're engaging with her, that she would find a way to share that with you in a respectful, loving way. Hey, Dad, I know I used to have a curfew, but now that I'm a little older, I would appreciate it if we didn't have to have a curfew now.
All
And
right, I'm
then
gonna
you
have to
could
stop you there. I'm gonna have to stop you there, Cindy, because that response is not gonna be that sweet. Okay. It's gonna be curt and to the point.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And
Her res-
I have a great kid, by the way, but it's not gonna be sweet like that.
okay, no, her response to you, you mean.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So the iterative process here, and I wouldn't call it a delightful iterative process, but if you have an open, healthy relationship, which we're hoping to help people build by way of
Yes.
talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, this is just a conversation between us, but if people are really feeling challenged, they should seek more support than the
Agreed.
radiation.
Agreed.
These
Yeah.
are these are ideas that come from my work, but this is no replacement for treatment. So I do encourage people if they're having ongoing struggles with how to navigate this next
Yes.
stage, which is very normal, by the way. So it doesn't mean you have a horrible relationship if you seek treatment or therapeutic advice or something.
I highly recommend it, everybody, whether you're married, you're single, you have
Yeah,
kids, no kids, it doesn't matter. Talking to somebody about any kind of issues that maybe you can't navigate by yourself and you want to get better,
right,
that's the way to do it. I highly
right,
recommend. Yeah.
right, exactly. So, but to be fair, if she is curt, so you're going to stop me right there, and I'm going to ask you to stop her right there. So
Hmm.
I would say, hey, I really want to hear what's on your mind. This isn't going very well for us. Can we just take a moment? Could you find another way to tell me that? Because I really want to hear what's on your mind, but we're not doing well in this conversation. So
Right.
you stop and you make a little bit of a process comment. And you
Yeah.
might think, well, that sounds just swell, Cindy, but that's just not so easy to pull off. So
Right.
I'm not going to ask for perfection. I'm going to ask for progress. And progress would be, frankly, the first time, even just naming it, just saying, hey, this isn't going very well. You know, let's take a beat and calm down a minute because I didn't mean harm. I'm sure you don't mean harm. You're trying to tell me something and I'm trying to tell you something, but we're not connecting. So let's figure this out because I think one of the things that's so hard about those bumpy places on holidays with family, which is so precious and so limited, is that you don't want it to go poorly. You don't want your time to be spent hassling through these developmental changes. But the
Yeah.
thing is, just because you're not together doesn't mean the developmental changes aren't happening.
That's
And
right.
that's why there's tension because it's
Yeah.
a growth curve and growth hurts, whether it's physical growth or mental growth. When we're stretching, we're often not that comfortable. And so you're witnessing a developmental shift for her and for you. It's a combined change that you're in the process of. And that's part
Yeah.
of growing up, isn't it?
I guess the one thing that I would like you to also address, and by the way, that made perfect sense.
Hmm.
What the challenge is, and I'll speak from my perspective, is the last time that I saw my daughter regularly, she was living underneath my roof regularly 7 days a week. There were rules to my house. We had that kind of relationship. Now she's there for a short time. She's older now. She's more
Right.
mature. She's
Right.
seasoned.
Right.
Yeah, so the whole dynamic about growth, but I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that time has been frozen for me as a parent because there's no context except for her being away at college for 4 years. Now she's back. And while she's grown away from college, I've stayed the same, except she's not living with me anymore. Does that make sense?
It completely does. And I can see how you fall in the hole.
Yeah.
It's the same way your mother encourages you to go get your teeth cleaned, right? I mean, right. It's the same thing. So you know it on both sides. You know what it
Yeah.
feels like now as a parent, and you
Yeah.
know what it feels like now as, and you know what it feels like as being a child with your mother. And even
Yes.
now that you're a full blown adult, she still
Yeah.
does it. So
Yeah.
it helps you see, the full circle of life here and how this gets played out. And you can also catch yourself, by the way. If
Mhm.
you find yourself doing something and she gets a little edgy in response, you could, instead of just being annoyed or hurt by that, you could also say to yourself, something didn't go very well. She's being edgy with me. Did I just do something? So you could check your own reality. What just happened there?
Right.
Because that didn't go very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if your answer is, I think I fell in the soup of being the parent of a teenager, I think that's what happened there. Then you can turn to her and say, you know what? I didn't like the way I just spoke to you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that
the
would be
follow-up.
helpful. You're
Yeah.
older now, you can reset the frame with her, and that'll be reassuring. And then she'll be able to say, "Hey, it's okay."
I think that's important what you said, that follow-up of recognizing that you maybe kind of had a misstep and you wanna tell them that you did, so we can grow from that situation. I like that a lot, and I wasn't able to do that at one time, but I am now, and I'm glad I'm able to recognize it as a parent and say, "Hey, listen, I probably shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't react that way. I'm sorry. Let's move forward and hope you forgive me. That wasn't my intent," kinda
Right.
things.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about families. I don't know if you come from a large extended family. I don't personally, but my wife has a large family.
Yeah.
And I've been to some really big bonanzas when it comes to Thanksgiving and Christmas that I thought I was looking forward to. And then I didn't realize the dynamic I was walking into
Yeah.
with all the diversity, different opinions, different politics, different music, sports likes, it's on and on and on. And it's really, you can take as much in as you want or as little as you want because there's people that are standing in the corner and there's somebody right in the middle of the room taking it all in. There's a person that likes to rev up anybody, and there's a person who likes to cook and watch sports. We have a potpourri, right? But just in general terms for all our listeners that are about to for the holidays meet up with families and looking forward to it or maybe even dreading it because of what they know might happen, what kind of just general overall advice you have going into those situations?
Bring your own car.
Yes. Ooh, good one, Cindy. Good one.
Um, and remember who you're visiting with. So don't be surprised when you walk up to cousin so and so and they're talking about something in a way that's not particularly appealing. And you may want to turn the channel and you're still talking to cousin so and so.
Yeah.
So you may want to change the subject if it's not a subject you're comfortable with. And you may want to think in advance about how do you politely excuse yourself if they seem on a topic and you're unable to get off that topic. So that's one thing. So to think who you're talking about, who you're talking to at the event, and how you want to structure your engagement with them. Like there may be people you would rather just ask about them, or there may be people that you want to keep it really brief, but at least say hello. So that you have to think about who's going to be there, who do you want to spend your most of your time with, all of that, and think about what's gonna help it be the most successful. And also, let's not forget your immediate family will be joining this group, right? So your daughter and your wife will be going with you. And so for you as a family to get together and say, okay, what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And what can we do to help? How can we support each other here?
I'm gonna ask you a really big question, and I know there might not be a perfect answer. And once again, when Cindy and I talk, folks, these are all generalizations. Okay, that's all they are.
Absolutely right.
Okay, it's not specific to
It's not the
anybody.
truth. It's
No,
not the
it's not.
truth.
It's
It's
just
an
we're
I
just.
it's an idea that's informed by years
That's right.
of work in the field of mental health. These are healthier ideas, but some of them are going to work and some of them aren't,
That's
and
right.
some of them may apply and some may not. So we have to
Yes.
work with all that, right? Absolutely. I'm glad you made that
Yeah.
qualifier, Dennis.
Well said. All right. So here's my big question. It seemed like as a human race, we're gluttons for punishment. Now, the reason why I say that is, and I'll give the example, I'm going to go to a large function with my wife. Maybe I'm looking forward to it, maybe I'm not, but I'm required to go because she wants to go. Bring my daughter, da 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 da. I know what I'm up against. I'm just going to kind of bite my tongue and do the best I can with it.
Right.
These people that want to go to these functions, there's some people that don't reluctantly do. But why do you figure, of all the people you've talked to over the years, why do we want to get together during the holidays and break bread? And we know that probably some mitigated disaster is going to happen, and we're forcing the future because we know that Uncle so and so is going to talk about politics, and Aunt Missy is going to do a really bad turkey that's going to be brutal, and we're not going to have a proper meal. And nobody's going to have the football games on. How dare they during Thanksgiving? All those things that you have during the holidays, it's just going to be epically bad, yet we still want to get together. Why do we do that as a human species?
Well, I guess it says something about the value of family, doesn't it, Dennis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's actually kind of moving as I say that. I feel my eyes welling up with tears. That
Yeah.
there's something more important than just simply um, perfectly agreeing on all of these sensibilities about the turkey or whether to watch football or
Yeah.
this political position. There's something deeper than that that brings the group together.
Yeah. And you know
And
what I would
that
say, Cindy?
as a culture, this is a culture of people. I mean, what do you hear about on the news all the time right now? Thanksgiving coming up. Prepare for the traffic. Why is that? That's because everybody's coming together and they're
Yes.
going through maybe hell to do it. I was just at the airport picking up my daughter and I wished I could have filmed it actually and brought it with me for our talk today because it was so dear. People who hadn't seen each other in such a long time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was so moving. So I think that's what we're balancing. We're balancing we're balancing the challenges of what it means to be together with the joy and the history of what it is that makes these relationships so deep. And and having said that, it's not lost on me what you started with, which is these are not your people, they're your wife's.
Yeah.
And that you've gotten to know them and connect with some of them more than others, of course, because that's just the nature of being human, but that it doesn't hold the same value for you that it probably holds for her. And so that's where you and your wife working together on that reality is really important. And that's where all immediate families need to do that for each other. Like, who's it important to? Well, it's important to her. Great. Then how's she going to work with you to help you feel comfortable?
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up too, because there was time when I did get anxiety, and then just to roll back on finalizing on asking my big question, I think it's about the human condition, about connection. That's why we do what we do, even though we know a mitigated disaster is about to happen in front of us. I think we just
That's
want to
right.
connect as human beings.
That's right.
Loneliness is everything it's cracked up to be. It just is. And while there's some people that do want to be alone during the holidays, I respect that completely. Most people want to be around other people. Uh, the other thing is, going to these holiday functions, it's just endless small talk, Cindy.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting talking to these people and I know them all, but I say to myself, and I want to be very clear about this, all wonderful people, and I don't see them often, but they don't care about me. And I'm there for my wife and my daughter and da 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 da. But you're right. You're taking one for the team for your spouse or a family member when you usually go to these, because both parties probably aren't at the same level of wanting to attend something, especially if you're not into large families or you get anxiety about being around that many people. So there's so many things to juggle in those situations. And then, you wonder that if you do have anxiety during family functions during the holidays, did I do enough that I made my spouse proud, or did I embarrass them or my partner? I mean, all these things start to roll through my head. Did I perform like I was supposed to at this thing with, making myself happy, but also more importantly, making them happy? Right.
I think you're talking about balance, but you're
Yes.
also describing it isn't possible to perfectly balance in these
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah.
And so what I think about it is that you talking with your wife about what it is that would be helpful to you would be great, and her letting you know what would be helpful to her, you know, and and the two of you thinking about how you can kind of come together as an immediate family with your daughter. All of those things are going to be really helpful. And if you do that, you can have a probably a better experience.
Right. Right. Well, and just one more personal story from me that I'd like to have you kind of not necessarily diagnose, but I'd like you to expound on and maybe have an opinion about it. At this big family function, which there might have been 40, 50, 60 people. I mean, a lot of people. And, I don't mind getting into it. I'm in the business of talking to people and I can small talk with everybody. But there was one person that I did not like at all and didn't want to be in the same space. It happened to be a brother in law. So it was unavoidable, Cindy. And yet I at first I didn't want to go. And, a discussion ensued about my attendance at this function that we had to go to. And I gave him because I knew it was the right thing to do. And my wife wanted to be there and our daughter was young at the time and there were lots of other children there. But how do you exercise that as the person that, you're supporting your partner? You've got a person that you loathe at the party that you're going to run into, and you don't want a fist fight to ensue, but you're full of anger and whatever else you feel about that person. How do you navigate around those really, really strong feelings when you didn't even want to be there in the first place and you're supporting another person by being there?
Well, I mean, it's an very interesting thing you're saying that's rich with opportunity for you, is the way I would put it. because people that we find the most challenging are our very, very best teachers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have so much to learn, don't you, in this moment?
Absolutely.
You have so much that you can take back as a gift. And you might be saying, "Oh, aren't you skipping through the daisies, Pollyanna?" Yeah, sounds like it, I know. But I actually really mean it, that, you look at this person, apparently this person is triggering for you in any number of ways. It triggers your sort of base feelings. I call them secondary feelings. And they're the protective feelings that we have, not the vulnerable feelings. And if you can connect with your vulnerable feelings underneath there and be curious about what it is that this person evokes in you, you might learn a lot about yourself. And you might also be able, on that basis, to be more skillful in dealing with that person. That if they're saying things that you find really triggering, when people are behaving in ways that aren't friendly or kind, which I'm presuming based on the way that you're describing this, hurt people hurt people.
Hmm.
So if this person is coming across in a way that is very triggering, I suspect they're having their own big challenges. And I don't know what they are, but you can also try to move beyond what's being presented and presume that there's some kind of vulnerability underneath there that's not being named, which makes it harder for you to connect with this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just suggesting that if that happens, that you can say, remember, hurt people hurt people. And so when you observe something like that happening, you don't bother to try to process this with someone like this or in this setting, but you do just try to take a beat and just lead with kindness. What's the kindest thing to do right now? The kindest thing to do might be leave the conversation, because of course you are only human.
Yeah.
So continuing to stay in conversation may not be the very best thing for you or that individual. So you
That's
may
it.
want to
Yeah.
just excuse yourself and say, "Hey, listen, it was really nice talking with you. I'm gonna head over here and grab something more to eat, or I haven't talked to cousin so and so, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
make my rounds, but I'm so glad we got to talk." And
Well,
you
that's,
just and you call it over sooner. That's another thing, is set your boundaries. Know you
yeah,
need to and plan to do it.
that's great analysis. And the epilogue to my story is that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Okay.
But Cindy, that's my MO. When I pull things in my head about a meeting with somebody or people or something that I'm dreading,
Hmm.
almost 99% of the time it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Okay. Well, that's
That's
interesting.
and
That's
that's
good
my
information for you.
that's my wiring, how I do it. So I've kind of learned over the years, all right, you're making it a big deal in your head right now and you're thinking about this huge explosion that's going to happen, but it really wasn't that bad. And
Okay.
now
That's
that
good to
lets you,
know.
yeah, that lets you grow for the next situation.
That's really good information what you just shared.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I'm sure there are a lot of people in my boat that feel the same way.
Oh, no, these are great examples, and they're what I hear about all day long after Thanksgiving and Christmas. So
Right.
this is just the reality of the holidays. And I sometimes channel Norman Rockwell in these talks. Like, well, Norman Rockwell has this picture of the family by the hearth. And this of course dates me to being an ancient person, of course, because Norman Rockwell was like a really old American painter. But Norman Rockwell was this guy who had these pictures of family by the hearth, singing songs, playing the piano, all these lovely things of gatherings and the warmth and love of family, which is an idyllic picture. And it is idyllic because that's not real family. What do real families do at the holidays? They have moments of connection. They have moments of disconnection. They have some arguments where they're sorting things and working on their growth. That's what they really do. When they come together, that's what they do. And that's what they do on holidays as well.
Right.
And that's because that's when we can do those things. So we have a standard in our culture. It's a bit like New Year's, where New Year's, it's a great night. I don't know about you. I don't like New Year's because there's too much pressure.
Yeah. I don't like it either. I
Right.
certainly don't go out on New Year's anymore. No way.
Right. Because it's hyped up as this most magnificent moment, but there's too much pressure on it. And the same is true with holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving and
Yeah.
Hanukkah and
Yeah.
Kwanzaa and all the rest.
Right.
So I think that remembering to take a little bit of pressure off, you're probably going to have a few more challenging moments, and that's okay. It's not that different than what I say about family vacations in that regard, that this is a moment of family coming together. And the thing is, that's not a normal circumstance, is it? The whole
No,
family
it's
coming
not.
together,
No,
right?
it's
And
not.
there's a reason we're not together all the time. because we're not supposed to be.
because we'd kill each other, Cindy. By the way, I don't mean this to be funny, but it's going to come out as funny. But I am in complete awe of the people at these functions that are completely oblivious and not self-aware, that will say anything at a party, a function, and not care two toots about what anybody else thinks.
I know.
I'm in awe of those people. I
I
don't know
know.
how they do it. I know they're not self-aware. They could be young. They usually sometimes a little bit older, but I don't want to pin somebody into a box.
No, right.
But it's absolutely awesome that somebody can go off and not care what anybody else thinks at a family function. And you know these people, I do.
Oh yeah. Well, I think the thing to it make well two comments. One, you're bringing up a really important thing about making holidays go well. One of the things you're bringing up, Dennis, that's so important is reading the room. Don't be a person that's oblivious.
Yeah.
Be,
Yeah.
be, be aware of what's going on in the room and notice, oh, somebody didn't like what I just said. Maybe I don't need to keep talking. So you're bringing up the extreme, these people that are oblivious and don't notice anything. That's a good point on our list of things to consider for getting together with family. Do read the room, do be emotionally intelligent, do look around and say, okay, there's some groups of people. And if you tend to be a shy person, go find the person standing by themselves looking uncomfortable. Go talk to them.
Sure. Sure.
But the point is also be aware of your engagement. If you're saying something a little on the provocative side, maybe stop. Maybe don't continue with that. We have a lot of provocative things going on in our world right now, and there's any number of
Yes.
opportunities to misstep. And in most families, both sides of political issues are there in the room.
Yes. There's no doubt about
And
that.
so those may not
That's a
be the
big
best
one.
topics. We
Yeah.
may be whittled down to talking about the weather, but even that's challenging to talk about these days.
Yeah, I know, but there's also some people that, perversely like to light a fire and bring it up
I,
purposely too.
right.
But I'll tell you, I want to push back on one thing.
Mm.
And this is only my experiences. And I've been in this industry a long time. And I like to think, Cindy, like you, I know people.
Yeah.
Here's my statement. Most people are not self-aware. I'm just telling you, they're not. And I've met a lot of people and I've interviewed a lot of people, Cindy. And that's the issue, is that when people aren't self-aware, and it's most of them, that presents problems in public or at family functions. It
No,
just does.
it's a good point though, Dennis, because you just brought up yet another thing indirectly to put on our list of what to do successfully,
Yeah.
which is if somebody says something a bit untoward, remember that.
Yes.
Remember that most people, they don't mean harm.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they don't do harm.
And that's a good point. And I do. I let it roll off my back because I just know they aren't self-aware. So it doesn't mean there's no bad bone in their
They
body.
don't mean
I know when
harm.
I know when somebody's being mean and they mean to be mean. It's pretty clear. But those people that aren't self-aware, they're almost innocents
Hmm.
in that fact that they just, socially don't know what they're doing. So
That's
you
right.
just have to kind of give them a pass. And sometimes that's hard during the holidays, especially when you're caught in the same room for several hours with them. And you have to, you have to do your best. Hey, listen, we only have about a minute left, and I always appreciate our conversations, and they're so fun. You and I could talk for hours about all this stuff. But
Absolutely.
I know you have to work, and so do I. But maybe just some final thoughts for everybody listening, whether they're, going to be with a small group, a larger group, with a partner, not a partner, going to it because they want to go to it. Maybe they don't want to go to this. Maybe just some final thoughts from you.
Well, first of all, Boots, my cat, would like to be seen. She seems to be wanting to get on the screen, so I thought I'd share her. She's wishing everybody happy holidays.
I love
Okay.
Boo.
Now,
Yeah.
can you sit? Anyway, so next thing, final thoughts. To reiterate some of the important things, do read the room and try to be aware that you may say things that other people don't agree with, and that picking challenging or potentially provocative comments is probably not the best thing to do at a holiday gathering. That's one thing. Next thing, don't get your feelings hurt if you can avoid it. Try not to take things personally. Try to just go ahead and assume the best, even if somebody said something that didn't feel particularly comfortable. Don't bother processing things at a gathering. And if there are particular people that you want to talk with, make a list of who they are. Figure out, who do you want to talk to? Who do you want to be with? I will end by saying this one kind of funny thing to notice. There's an Adele video that was on Saturday Night Live many years ago about Adele there was a little girl at the table, and there are all these different political attitudes. You're making
Yeah,
me think
I've
of
seen
it.
it. It's a great bit.
And they're talking about all these things, and they're getting all upset with each other. And the little girl comes over and pushes the old-fashioned tape recorder and plays
Yeah.
the Adele song.
Yeah.
And everybody stops and sings the song, and then they go back to arguing, and she pushes the button again. So it's, I guess I'm just saying, this is the nature of it. This is the nature of what goes on. There are all these different factions, and people come together because there's a greater good here, even than beyond the differences. And do support your families so that they can come to the larger group, so that people that it's not their direct family can still feel comfortable.